10 years. A decade of building a life with the man I thought I knew better than myself. That morning, our anniversary morning, I woke early to prepare his favorite breakfast. The sun filtered through our bedroom curtains, casting golden light across Mark's sleeping face. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. I pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead before slipping quietly from our room. My parents' anniversary had always been a battlefield. Accusations hurled across dinner tables, icy silences that stretched for days. I was determined ours would be different. I had prepared everything: his favorite bourbon-glazed salmon for dinner, candles that smelled like the beach where we'd honeymooned, his gift wrapped in silver paper hidden behind the cookbooks. While the coffee brewed, I decided to change our bedsheets, fresh linens, a small gesture to make the night special. That's when I saw it. As I tugged at the duvet, something small and glittering tumbled onto the hardwood floor. I bent to retrieve it. A diamond earring, delicate and unfamiliar. Not mine. Never mine. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about us shattered like glass. I stood frozen, the earring burning in my palm like a hot coal. Memories flooded back. I was 12 again, helping my mother fold laundry when she found a lipstick-stained collar. The screaming that followed, the shattering plates, my father's pathetic denials. It meant nothing, he'd said. It meant everything. It meant our family would never be the same. Mom had shown me the evidence, taught me the signs. Men always slip up somewhere, she'd said, her voice bitter as winter wind. Always leave a trace. Now, 20 years later, I was living her nightmare. My hands trembled as I walked to my jewelry box, methodically comparing the foreign earring to every pair I owned. Nothing matched. Nothing came close. I held it up to the window, watching sunlight dance through the diamond. It was expensive, the kind of gift you'd give someone you were serious about. I realized then that I'd been subconsciously waiting for this moment since our wedding day, bracing for the inevitable blow, for Mark to reveal himself as just another version of my father. Looking back, the signs had been there for weeks. Mark working late without explanation. Hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Last Tuesday, the faint scent of perfume, not my usual vanilla, but something floral and sophisticated, lingering on his collar. I dismissed it all, trusted him despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. After all, this was Mark, steady, reliable Mark who'd spent 10 years proving he wasn't my father. My phone buzzed. My sister Ellie's name flashed across the screen. I silenced it, unable to speak through the tightness in my throat. How could I tell her? How could I admit that my marriage was just another beautiful lie? I moved through the house like a ghost, touching photographs of our life together. Hawaii 3 years ago, his arm around my waist. Christmas at his parents', snow in our hair. Were there signs in those smiling faces that I'd missed? The anniversary dinner I'd planned sat half-prepared on the counter as dusk gathered outside our windows. The salmon remained uncooked, the candles unlit. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. Not with that earring burning a hole in my pocket. I became a detective in my own home. While the anniversary dinner grew cold, I methodically went through Mark's belongings, something I'd never done in 10 years of marriage. His dresser drawers revealed nothing unusual, but his wallet told a different story. Tucked behind his driver's license, receipts from Castellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown we'd never visited together. Another from a jewelry store dated 2 weeks ago. My blood ran cold when I found a second phone, a prepaid I'd never seen before, hidden in his gym bag. It was password protected, but the lock screen showed 3 missed calls from Ellie. Was my own sister involved? No, impossible. I powered up his laptop, hands shaking as I tried his usual password. Denied. I tried our anniversary date. Denied. In desperation, I typed his mother's birthday, and the screen unlocked. There it was. A separate email account I'd never seen before. Messages exchanged with florists, restaurants, venues, cryptic references to the big day and making sure everything is perfect. My chest felt hollow, each discovery pressing against me like stone. The evidence mounted with every passing minute until I could barely breathe under its weight. The front door opened at precisely 6 o'clock. Mark called my name, his voice light and happy. I composed myself in the bathroom mirror, wiped away tears, and painted on a smile. He stood in our kitchen, handsome in his work suit, holding a bouquet of stargazer lilies, my favorite, and a small wrapped box. His face fell slightly seeing the half-prepared dinner, but he recovered quickly. Rough day? Don't worry about it. We can order in. His thoughtfulness was salt in my wound. I nodded mechanically and accepted his kiss, studying his features for signs of deception. Did his eyes avoid mine a second too long? Was his smile too eager? We ordered from our favorite Thai place and ate in the dining room, candles lit between us casting flickering shadows. He talked about work, asked about my day. I responded on autopilot, my responses hollow. When he brought out tiramisu for dessert, another anniversary tradition, I could bear it no longer. As he turned to get plates, I placed the diamond earring directly in the center of his dessert plate. The small jewel glinted in the candlelight. When he returned, his eyes fell on it immediately. I watched his expression shift from confusion to recognition, then, most damning of all, alarm. In that moment, without a word spoken, I knew my marriage was over. "Where did you find that?" he asked, his voice suddenly thick. I stared at him, memorizing the face of the stranger I'd married. "In our bed this morning," I replied, each word precise and cutting. "Where you left it?" He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Jenna, it's not what it looks like." I finished for him. "Isn't that what they all say?" My voice was surprisingly steady despite the earthquake inside me. He ran a hand through his hair, his nervous tell, and reached for his phone. "I just need to make a quick call, and I can explain everything." Of course. Warning his mistress. Coordinating their stories. I watched him dial, heard him say, "Elle, we have a situation," before I snatched the phone from his hand and ended the call. "You're calling my sister right now?" The betrayal doubled, twisted inside me like a knife. He tried to explain, something about plans and surprises and misunderstandings, but all I heard was the hollow sound of excuses. The truth was in the spaces between his words, in what he couldn't bring himself to say. We went to bed in separate rooms that night, the wall between us more than physical. I lay awake until dawn, our entire relationship replaying in my mind, searching for the exact moment when everything started to unravel. Morning arrived with painful clarity. While Mark showered, I sat on our bed scrolling through old photos on my phone. Us at his brother's wedding. The camping trip where it rained for 3 days straight and we played cards in our tent. The surprise birthday party he'd thrown me 2 years ago. Had those moments been real, or was I just another obligation to him? A placeholder until something better came along? The shower shut off, and decision crystallized within me. I would not be my mother, bitter and broken for years, clinging to the wreckage of a dead marriage. I would not beg anyone to love me. With mechanical efficiency, I packed a suitcase, clothes, toiletries, important documents. I took half the cash from our emergency fund and my grandmother's pearls. When the bathroom door opened, I was zipping the suitcase closed. Going somewhere? Mark asked, water still dripping from his hair. I brushed past him without answering, the weight of my wedding ring suddenly unbearable. In the kitchen, I scrawled a note, words sharp enough to draw blood. I know about her. Don't contact me. Lawyers will be in touch. I placed my ring on his nightstand, where it caught the morning light, throwing prisms across the wall. 10 years reduced to a glittering circle of metal, abandoned. The front door closed behind me with a soft click of finality. In the car, I blocked Mark's number, then his email, then removed him from all my social media accounts. Digital amputation. Clean breaks heal faster, or so I told myself. I drove across town to the Westbrook Hotel, a place we'd never visited together. No memories there to ambush me. At the registration desk, I hesitated when asked for my name. Jenna Collins, I said finally, using my maiden name for the first time in a decade. The word felt foreign on my tongue, a rebirth of my pre-marriage self. The hotel room was impersonal and pristine. Beige walls, generic artwork, a view of the parking lot. Perfect. No trace of Mark or our life together. I placed the diamond earring on the desk where I could see it. A reminder of why I was here, why I couldn't weaken. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from unknown numbers. Mark using friends' phones, no doubt. I silenced them all. That afternoon, I contacted a divorce attorney my friend had used last year. How soon can we file? I asked, my voice hollow as I scheduled a consultation for the following morning. The woman who checked into that hotel was not the same one who had woken up that morning planning an anniversary dinner. She was harder, colder, determined never to be anyone's fool again. Days passed in a fog of paperwork and phone calls. The hotel room became both my sanctuary and my prison. I lived on room service and minimal sleep, drafting separation terms with clinical detachment. Friends left increasingly concerned messages. Apparently Mark wasn't answering his phone either. Good. At least, he had the decency not to spin his version of events to our social circle. Each night, I watched couples stroll hand in hand past my window, heading to dinner or movies or ordinary lives. I calculated the exact moment my marriage had died, 7:42 p.m., when the earring glinted in the candlelight and Mark's face confirmed everything. Or perhaps it had been dying for months without my knowledge, a slow cancer growing while I remained oblivious. My sister Ellie was the most persistent, her voicemails growing increasingly desperate. Jenna, please call me back. It's not what you think. Please. I deleted them all. Of course she would defend him. They'd always been close. Too close, apparently. After 3 days, even my mother called, concern evident in her voice. Whatever happened, don't make decisions while you're angry, she advised, ironic coming from the woman who had burned my father's clothes on the front lawn after their separation. I assured her I was thinking clearly for the first time in years. The rapid knocking startled me awake on the 4th morning. I checked the peephole to see Ellie, her face drawn with worry. I know you're in there, Jenna. The front desk confirmed it. Open up, or I'll stand here all day. Reluctantly, I unlocked the door. My sister burst in like a hurricane, dropping her purse and examining me from head to toe. "You look terrible," she said bluntly. "And you've got Mark half out of his mind with worry." I laughed bitterly. "I'm sure his girlfriend is consoling him." Ellie's expression shifted from concern to confusion, then to something like horror. "His what?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. "Don't pretend you don't know," I snapped, retrieving the diamond earring from the desk and thrusting it at her. "I found this in our bed, on our anniversary. And then I found the receipts for restaurants I've never been to, the secret email account, the mysterious phone calls to you, by the way. Were you helping him hide it? Is that why you're here? To convince me to forgive the unforgivable." I was shouting by the end, months of suppressed fear and insecurity bursting forth like a geyser. But instead of defensive anger, Ellie's face crumpled with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. Not pity, which I would have despised. Not denial, which I expected. Something else entirely. Devastation. "Oh, Jenna," she whispered, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "You absolute idiot." She rummaged through her purse, pulling out her phone. "Mark hasn't been cheating on you. He's been planning to recreate your entire wedding day for your anniversary." She showed me photos. Mark and Ellie at the botanical garden where we'd held our ceremony, meeting with the original florist, sampling cakes at the bakery we'd used. "He's been working with me for months to get everything perfect. He tracked down as many of the original guests as possible." She scrolled through more pictures. Mark looking at invitations, Mark with the band that had played our first dance. "And this," she said, turning to a photo of her jewelry box, "is where that earring came from." She pointed to a pair of diamond drops, one of which was clearly missing. "Mark borrowed one because he was having replicas made of your original wedding earrings, the ones that belonged to Grandma that you lost on your honeymoon, remember? He needed to make sure the setting matched exactly." The room tilted around me as understanding crashed down. But the secret phone, the password-protected email, Ellie's eyes flashed with anger. "To keep you from finding out about the surprise? You suspicious?" She stopped herself. "I've spent 10 years watching you wait for him to let you down, to become dad. And all he's done is become the most devoted husband I've ever seen." The evidence mounted, damning me with every new revelation. Ellie showed me everything. Receipts for the venue deposit labeled cryptically to avoid detection if I saw the credit card statement. Messages between Mark and my best friend coordinating the music playlist identical to our wedding. Screenshots of Mark asking my boss for time off for me. A surprise week-long vow renewal trip to recreate our honeymoon. "The perfume you smelled? Mean it? From when I helped him shop for your gift last week." She pulled out a small jewelry box from her purse, opening it to reveal a sapphire pendant that matched my engagement ring. "He's been working overtime for 3 months to afford all this." She pushed up her sleeve, revealing a delicate bracelet. "And this? The jeweler let him borrow your earring to ensure the replicas would be perfect matches to the original. He left it with me while the custom work was being done." Each word hammered another nail into the coffin of my certainty. The affair, the betrayal, all inventions of my traumatized mind. While I had been hunting for evidence to confirm my deepest fears, Mark had been working tirelessly to create a perfect memory. "Where is he now?" I asked, voice barely audible. Ellie's expression darkened. "After finding your charming goodbye note? Not answering his phone. Not going to work. His brother found him sitting in the dark at their place last night, staring at nothing. Congratulations, Jenna." You've broken the heart of the only man who never deserved your distrust. The full weight of what I'd done crashed over me like a tidal wave. I had taken 10 years of loyalty and devotion and repaid them with the worst accusation possible, without giving Mark even a moment to explain. I'd been so certain, so righteous in my anger. Now each proof of his infidelity revealed itself as evidence of his love. I grabbed my phone, fingers trembling as I unblocked his number and called. Straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again. He's not answering anyone now, Ellie said quietly. I only found out what happened when his brother called me, worried sick. She pulled a crumpled paper from her pocket, my farewell note, the words even more vicious than I remembered. I sank to the floor, the magnitude of my mistake threatening to suffocate me. What have I done? I whispered. My sister sat beside me, her anger softening slightly. You let Dad destroy your marriage from beyond the grave, she said simply. Just like Mom always warned us not to do. She was right. I had been so focused on not becoming our mother, bitter and clinging, that I'd become something worse, someone who destroyed a good thing before it could destroy me. I had trusted the ghosts of my past more than the man who had spent a decade proving his love. How do I fix this? I asked, the words inadequate for the damage I'd caused. Ellie shook her head slowly. I don't know if you can. I spent the next 2 days frantically searching for Mark. His office said he'd taken personal leave. His brother reported he'd stayed one night, but left without saying where he was going. I drove to every place that held meaning for us. The park where he'd proposed, the restaurant where we'd had our first date, the lookout point where we'd watched meteor showers. At each location, I found small signs he'd been there recently. A coffee cup from his favorite shop near the park bench, a receipt from the lookout point's visitor center dated the previous day. I was tracking a ghost, always one step behind. Our friends reported the same thing. He looks hollow-eyed. He won't talk about it. He asked to be alone. On the 3rd day, exhausted and desperate, I visited our special bench at the waterfront park, the place we decided to try for children someday. There, nestled in the crack of the wooden seat, I found his wedding ring. The simple platinum band we'd chosen together, inscribed with our initials and wedding date. He'd removed the last physical symbol of our connection. I closed my fingers around it, the metal cold against my skin, and finally allowed myself to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. Passers-by gave me a wide berth, this wild-eyed woman clutching a ring and coming apart at the seams. I had accused an innocent man of the worst betrayal, and in doing so, had become the betrayer myself. When I returned to the hotel that evening, defeated and empty, the desk clerk handed me an envelope. Delivered by hand, she said, eyeing my tear-stained face with concern. I recognized Mark's handwriting immediately, the slightly slanted letters, the way he crossed his T's with a flourish. Inside the elevator, I traced my name on the envelope, afraid to read what was inside, yet desperate to hear from him, even in writing. In my room, I opened it with trembling fingers. The letter inside wasn't angry, as I'd expected. It was something far worse, profoundly sad. Jenna, it began, I've spent days trying to understand how we got here. 10 years, and you still don't know me at all. He described years of noticing my subtle flinches whenever he worked late, the questions that weren't quite accusations, the way I'd check his phone when I thought he wasn't looking. I've spent our entire marriage trying to heal a wound I didn't create, and somehow I've only made it deeper. He wrote about the anniversary surprise, how he'd spent months planning every detail, wanting to give me the perfect wedding day that my anxiety had partially robbed me of a decade ago. I thought if I could recreate that day, maybe this time you could fully enjoy it without worrying about what might go wrong. The irony isn't lost on me. The letter ended not with anger, but with exhaustion. I've never given you a reason not to trust me. Not once in 10 years. I don't know how to keep proving something that should have been assumed from the beginning. I don't know if I have it in me to try anymore. His words stripped me bare, forced me to confront the damage I'd carried into our marriage. I hadn't just accused Mark of cheating, I'd never fully trusted him from the beginning. I'd been looking for evidence of betrayal for 10 years, interpreting every late night, every unexplained absence through the lens of my parents' failed marriage. And he had known. All this time, he had known and tried to compensate. The realization was agonizing. That night, I wrote my own letter, the most honest words I'd ever put on paper. I confessed everything. How my father's multiple affairs had broken something fundamental in my ability to trust, how my mother's bitterness had become a cautionary tale I was desperate to avoid. I wrote about the panic attacks I'd hidden from him early in our relationship whenever he didn't answer his phone, the ways I'd tested his loyalty in small, unconscious ways over the years. I've been preparing for you to leave from the day you arrived, I admitted, gathering evidence for a case that only existed in my mind. I ended by taking full responsibility, making no excuses. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. But you deserve the truth, not just about what I thought you did, but about the broken parts of me that made me think it. I delivered the letter to his best friend's house, where he was rumored to be staying. Please, I begged Chris at the door. Make sure he gets this. Then I returned to my hotel room to wait in painful silence for a response that might never come. A week passed. Then 10 days. The silence was deafening. I returned to work, moved back to our house, went through the motions of living. The home we'd built together felt cavernous and empty without Mark's presence, his coffee mug absent from the counter, his side of the closet half empty where he'd retrieved some clothes. I watered his plants, paid our bills, and slept on the couch because our bed felt too large alone. On the 11th day, a text. Grounds. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. The coffee shop where we'd met 12 years ago, when I'd spilled my latte on his laptop. My heart thundered in my chest as I entered the familiar space the next morning. Mark sat at our old table by the window, 2 coffees already waiting. He looked thinner, shadows beneath his eyes matching my own. I slid into the seat across from him, hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. Thank you for coming, I said, voice barely audible above the cafe's ambient noise. He nodded once, eyes meeting mine briefly before looking away. We talked cautiously at first, circling the enormous hurt between us. I apologized again. He acknowledged receiving my letter. The conversation stuttered and stalled until, reaching for my coffee, my fingers accidentally brushed against his. We both froze at the contact. Electricity and familiarity. Something shifted in his expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward it. His fingers didn't immediately withdraw. I miss you, he admitted finally, the words clearly difficult. But I don't know how to trust that this won't happen again. Our conversation at Grounds lasted 3 hours. For the first time in our relationship, we spoke without filters or fear. I showed him my childhood diary, pages filled with accounts of my parents' explosive fights, the day I found my father's second apartment key, the night my mother swore she'd never trust another man. I've been carrying this with me our entire relationship, I confessed. Mark listened, really listened, his eyes never leaving my face. Then he shared his own truth, how my subtle distrust had eroded his confidence over the years, how he'd become increasingly desperate to prove himself worthy. Every late night at work, every business trip, I could feel you wondering, he said quietly. It made me second-guess every interaction with female colleagues, every innocent decision. I was living my life trying to avoid triggering your suspicions. The pain in his voice cut through me. I didn't realize, I whispered, though of course I should have. He sighed deeply. And I should have addressed it directly instead of trying to compensate. We've both been fighting ghosts that have lived between us for years. Before we parted, he showed me his phone, photos of everything he'd planned for our anniversary. The recreated wedding arch. The dress he'd had made identical to my original. The guest list with nearly everyone confirmed. I still have all the reservations, he said hesitantly. Most can be rescheduled. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in weeks. Maybe, I suggested carefully, we could still do it. Not as an anniversary celebration, but as a new beginning, with new vows that acknowledge what we've learned. The following weeks were a delicate dance of rebuilding trust. Not just Mark's trust in me, but my trust in reality itself. I started therapy to address the deep-rooted trauma I'd carried from childhood. Mark moved back home, though we slept in separate rooms at first. Each day brought small steps, shared meals, tentative touches, moments of laughter that felt like miracles after so much pain. He brought home the custom-made replica earrings that had started everything, perfect matches to my grandmother's originals. I placed them beside each other in my jewelry box, symbols of what was lost and what could be found again. Slowly, painfully, we rebuilt. Not the same marriage we'd had before, that was gone forever, but something potentially stronger, because it acknowledged our human fragility. 3 months after that terrible anniversary, we held our vow renewal ceremony. Not the elaborate recreation Mark had originally planned, but something more intimate and honest. In a small garden with only our closest friends and family, we spoke vows that acknowledged both our love and our struggles. I promise to trust what you show me, not what my fears whisper. I vowed, voice breaking. Mark squeezed my hands. And I promise to speak my truth even when it's difficult, rather than trying to protect you from it, he responded. My sister stood beside me. The earrings she'd innocently lent now returned and sparkling in the sunlight. No longer evidence of betrayal, but reminders of how quickly we can misinterpret the actions of those we love. 1 year later, our marriage is both weaker and stronger than before. Weaker because we've abandoned the illusion of perfection, stronger because what remains is ruthlessly honest. The diamond earring that nearly destroyed us now hangs in a small frame beside our wedding photo, a reminder that what looks like betrayal can sometimes be love wearing an unfamiliar face. Mark and I have learned to check our assumptions, to ask directly instead of interpreting silently. I've learned that trust isn't a one-time gift, but a daily choice, one that sometimes requires fighting against the voices of our past. Sometimes still, when Mark works late or takes an unexpected phone call, I feel the old panic rising. The difference now is that I recognize it as a ghost from my past, not a reflection of my present. And when those moments come, I hold the matched pair of earrings, feeling their weight in my palm, remembering how close I came to destroying something precious over a misunderstanding born of my own wounds. If you're watching this and recognize yourself in my story, if you've been carrying another person's betrayal into your current relationship, please learn from my mistake. Trust is a choice we make every day, sometimes against our own instincts. Don't let the ghosts of past hurts destroy the love standing right in front of you. Like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about relationships and the lessons we learn from them, and share with someone who might need to hear this message today. And please, comment below about a time when your assumptions nearly cost you something precious. We heal when we share our stories.